Hey guys, it's Drew here, and welcome back to another video. And today I'm going to be going over my list of the best Pokemon RomHacks. Now this tier list is going to be coming from a Nuzlocker's perspective. For a little bit of background, I play mostly Nuzlocke's hardcore challenges, deathless challenges, Kaizo. I'm going to be putting together a list basically based on how much I enjoyed the games, not really the difficulty level, but just how much I've enjoyed the games, how well they're made, how well they're balanced, stuff like that. Let's start off with Drayano's first ROM hack ever made, Fire Red Omega. Basically, Fire Red Omega is very outdated, but it was also pretty good for its time. Now, ROM hacks nowadays are a lot more polished, there's a lot more thought put into. ROM hacks nowadays are a lot more balanced. A lot of these games are way more balanced than a lot of these Drayano games, and that's something that Drayano hacks are gonna lack. Drayano doesn't really do beta testing, nor does he really do Nuzlocks. So from my perspective, even though some of these games are made with a lot of like good quality of life stuff, like EV Trainer, Renegade Platinum, for example, or like really cool type changes and stat changes, these hacks do lack a little bit of balance. And Fire Red Omega, sadly, you can see this the most. There's not too many edits that the AI gets. Most of the difficulty from Fire Red Omega comes from the gym leaders and the rival fights, but other than that, it's really not that difficult. Something that I like about Fire Red Omega is the starter choices. If I had to pick one thing. Sadly, I'm not too big on Fire Red Omega. I'm gonna have to put in D tier. Alright, next up we got Sacred Gold. Now, there is a new version of Sacred Gold coming out, so version 2 could be higher on this list, but Sacred Gold itself, it has a lot of similarities with Fire Red Omega to where it's not very polished. The game is pretty easy relative to other games, and you also get really good Pokemon. Although there are some really cool aspects of this game. There's a big rocket gauntlet on your way to the Safari Zone, for example. That's pretty difficult, and there's a bunch of tag battles. And then also the rocket gauntlets, I think it's in the Rocket HQ, are pretty difficult as well. But there are some difficult aspects of the game, but you really don't get that until after like the 4th gym badge, which is a little wonky. Like the first gym is pretty free, then the second gym, obviously with the Scyther, could be annoying, but other than that, it's just kind of a blowover of a game. Now the Kanto region is edited a bit to be harder, which is nice, so I will give it a little bit of credit, but relative to the other games, it's just not as balanced as well. Quite easy, and they kind of hold your hand through a lot of it, but you know, it's not terrible. Now, the fact that these two are in D tier doesn't make these bad hacks. These are still fun to play. It's just relative to the other games, I do not enjoy them as much. Alright, next up we have Rising Ruby and Seeking Sapphire. I think these are actually the most underrated of the Drayano games. Probably because they're in Gen 6 and people don't like Gen 6, but these games are actually pretty decent. The gym leader teams are actually a bit difficult, which I like. And the encounters that you get aren't like insanely busted. The Elite 4 team is also pretty interesting, but obviously the common theme about Drayano hacks is that they lack a balancing, and that's also seen in this game. So I'm gonna put Rising Ruby in C tier. Now we're at the better half of the Drayano games. Next up we have Blaze Black 2 and Volt White 2. I absolutely love these games. I think my favorite feature of these games were the addition of the Hoenn gym leaders. Basically, in every town that there's a gym leader, there's also a Hoenn gym leader that has its highest level Pokemon is one under the level cap for that gym of that city. This game is also pretty cool in the sense that it is quite difficult compared to the other hacks. You get a limited amount of encounters, and also the gym leader fights are pretty interesting. So Blaze Black 2 and Volt White 2, I'm going to actually put it in all the way up in A tier. It's actually a very fun hack. There's also a Redux version coming out, as most of you guys know. Alright, next up we have Blaze Black. Now, me and Blaze Black have a history. This is going to be a very interesting pick for me, because Blaze Black is a very different game. Basically, if you don't know, I did a Blaze Black Hardcore Plus 1 death equals reset challenge, and it took me 196 attempts, so I know this game extremely well. Basically, Blaze Black, it's very outdated, right? There's a lot of, and that you can see that in a lot of ways. For example, the random trainers their movesets aren't changed. So the Pokemon that the trainers have will actually just be level up learn sets. So basically random trainers are just not a threat in this game at all, and they're barely edited too, which is really funny. What Blaze Black is basically just boss rush. Basically the entire game, it's like there's 8 extremely hard trainers and like that's it. Which is really fun. Obviously that made the Deathless challenge very hard, especially Lenora Berg. Yeah, the early game is really gatekept because of Lenora and Berg. But after that, the difficulty smooths out a bit, and then it gets extremely hard towards the end as well. It's by far the hardest Elite Four and Champion fight in any Drayano game. I would even compare the Elite Four and Champion to Kaizo level difficulty. It's an interesting hack for sure. But I will say it's kind of outdated. The balancing is interesting for sure. I would say in Blaze Black, the encounters are kind of lopsided. Like, let's say, for example, on Route 1, if there was a tier list for all the Pokemon that you can get on Route 1, Starly would be in S tier, but then everything else, like Herdier would be like in B tier, then everything else would be in D tier. For example. Then there's also other stuff for encounters, like on Route 18, there's a 50% Bisharp, 50% Lopunny. Bisharp being one of the best Pokemon in the game, and then Lopunny being just about useless. Kind of outdated in that way, which is a little tough, and I have to bring it down for that reason. I am super biased about how I love this game, but just looking at it from an objective perspective, there's so much potential that could be in Blaze Black. If the random trainers were edited to be more difficult, if the boss fights were all around as difficult as each other, and if the encounters were changed a bit, this would be such a good hack. But it's already pretty good, so I'm gonna put it in B tier. All right, next up we have Renegade Platinum. Oh boy. A lot of you guys might hate me for this, but I'm not too big on Ren Plat. If you don't know, I've spent a lot of time on Ren Plat. I did a Deathless Hardcore Plus challenge of this. I played this game too many times. The boss fights are pretty hard. This game is the worst in that it gives the player too much options. Now, I'm doing this tier list kind of from like a nuzlocking perspective and basically how I enjoy the games. This game is just incredibly unbalanced, giving you broken stuff like guaranteed Gabite, guaranteed Matane, guaranteed Fairy Water Milotic to start, and then EV Trainer. It's good for casual players, but for me, I feel like there's just so many better hacks. I'm not too big on Renegade Platinum. I mean, there are so many boss fights in this game, which is really cool. Also, the random trainers are quite difficult as well. Also, obviously, the Elite Four is pretty cool. With 4 random teams for each member and champion, it makes playing for the Elite Four extremely difficult. When I did my Deathless challenge, playing that Elite Four was insanely difficult. So that does give it brownie points. If the player was restricted a bit more, maybe a few less changes, a few less broken encounters, this game could be like all the way up here. But for now, I'm gonna have to put it in C tier. Right above Rising Ruby. Alright, next up we have the SHF hacks, the Kaizo hacks. These hacks are really interesting because they're so much different than the other games, as in they're balanced in a way to make the player suffer, which is really interesting. The way that they are made to make the player suffer, they can actually turn into really fun games. Now obviously these games are not for the faint of heart. They are extremely difficult and require a good amount of game knowledge to get through. But first up, we have Blue Kaizo. Blue Kaizo, obviously because it's from Pokemon Blue version, it's going to be extremely different than other hacks, but I will say I do absolutely love this hack. Now, obviously Gen 1 mechanics are pretty whack, but if you have them down, this hack can actually be really fun. Now, in terms of like a Nuzlocke challenge, I don't think anyone's really completed a hardcore Nuzlocke of this game. Even doing a regular Nuzlocke with potions and whatnot does turn into a pretty fun challenge. There's gym leader edits, there's wild Pokemon edits, there's Elite Four edits, there's random trainer Pokemon edits, just like before. But this hack kind of takes it to the extreme and giving random trainers like 6 boom Pokemon, and then also the mapping is changed a ton to be really difficult. Like a lot of puzzle solving, a lot of navigating through huge forests and caves and whatnot. But overall, it's a pretty fun hack. I'm gonna put it in B tier. Now, unlike Blue Kaizo, Crystal Kaizo is it's not amazing, I will say. There is the fact that it's in Gen 2. Gen 2 is already not amazing. It's pretty fun early on to do a Nuzlocke of this game, but as you go on, the game just scales in difficulty so badly. It just like gets insanely harder, and then the meta of this game just becomes PP stalling like every Pokemon. Now, unlike Blue Kaizo, doing this game without healing items does seem a lot more viable, but it's also extremely difficult. You like can't beat the Elite Four without using healing items, and that's because in Crystal Kaizo, the Elite Four goes up to level 120. Now, some saving grace to this game is that there is a team of ROM hackers working to improve this game. Now, I don't know how soon it'll be coming out, maybe this year, but it is being improved upon. But right now, it is pretty garbage, which is sad to say because SHF is such a good ROM hack creator. Blue Kaizo, Emerald Kaizo are amazing hacks, and he's currently working on Platinum Kaizo as well. But this is definitely on the lower end of his works. So I'm gonna put it in D tier. I'm gonna put it right between Fire Red Omega and Sacred Gold. Alright, next up we have Emerald Kaizo. Alright, now you could call me an EK frog, you could call me a tryhard, all you want, but this is S tier. This is the best hack ever made in my opinion. This hack is insanely good. I'm probably gonna come out with a video about why Emerald Kaizo is the best ROM hack ever made, but this ROM hack is near perfection when it comes to balancing. This ROM hack also doesn't have many Pokemon changes. It basically uses most of the vanilla mechanics to just make a really good game in terms of it's very beatable with what the player gets. You can get tons of different encounters throughout the game. Different variety of encounters, and you can still beat the game with playing well. Now, obviously, this hack has a huge learning curve. In order for this game to be beaten with a hardcore Nuzlocke, the game had to be broken down so much. This game had to be broken down so much. There's a 25-page document right here telling about every single thing about how the AI works, for example. And knowing how the AI works is so crucial for producing good gameplay, like having good fights, good strategies, whatnot. This is just such a different game, because you have to play so well to beat it. You have to use damage calculating, you need to know what switches in, you need to encounter route correctly, you need to prepare for like every single random fight, you need to prepare for encounters as well. It's just an insane ROM hack, an insane challenge that it's not for everyone, but it is so much fun when you get into it. And this game is just so well made. Now, a lot of people ask, when should I play Emerald Kaizo? Should I play something like Fire Red Omega or Ren Plat first? What I say is, in order to play Emerald Kaizo and be successful at it, you need to take the time and learn the game mechanics. Basically, the switch AI, how the AI works, obviously your type chart. It's a very doc heavy game. Like when I play, I have a move changes doc, I have the showdown calculator, I have a spreadsheet to show what Pokemon come in and whatnot. Basically, if you're patient enough and you're willing to learn how to play Emerald Kaizo, it becomes such a fun experience. And playing games like these could help you, but in the end, Emerald Kaizo just takes a lot more to beat than any other game that you're gonna have to learn how to play Emerald Kaizo regardless. Alright, next up, we got some new ROM hacks actually. We got Pokemon Vintage White, Primeval Black 2. Now, Vintage White released just about a year ago, and just released the final patch just a couple weeks ago from recording this. And then Primeval Black 2 is actually still in beta. This is the sequel to Vintage White. Not many people know about this game, but Primeval Black 2 is the sequel to Vintage White. There's a lot of similarities, but there are a lot of changes. I'll get into that in a bit. I'm actually good buddies with both of the creators of this game. These are actually not created by the same people. This is not Suicune and this is Nurse Ida, respectively. And something very interesting about Vintage White and Primeval Black 2, compared to any other game, is that the creators of these games are actually hardcore nuzlockers themselves. Now, Vintage White is very interesting because if you've ever played Vintage White, the first thing you notice is that there's so many changes to the Pokemon, and it does take a lot to get used to. It's something that does sometimes rub me the wrong way. It does take a lot of getting used to, and you do have to constantly check the documentation for just about every Pokemon. But this game is made in a pretty well way. There's so many different Pokemon you can use, and I think the best thing about it is the difficulty scaling. The difficulty kind of stays consistent throughout the whole game, which is really cool. Obviously, it's not perfect. There's some broken stuff like Kingler, Electrode, etc. But this game is pretty well made, so I'm gonna put it in A tier, right above Blaze Black and Volt White 2. Next up is Primeval Black 2. I don't have a huge amount of experience with this game, but from what I have played, it is very similar to Vintage White. It is pretty similar to Vintage White from a balancing perspective. There's a lot of Pokemon you can get, a lot of them are viable. A lot of the boss fights are pretty consistent in difficulty throughout the game from what I've seen. There is some room for improvement in Primeval Black 2. A lot of the random trainers are either very hard or very easy, but this is still in beta, so I can't judge it too much on that yet. I'm gonna put Primeval Black 2 in B tier for now. I think this game has so much potential, and I'm really excited to play it in the future and see how it goes. Now, if you want to be updated on the development of Primeval Black 2, the creator of this game, Nurse Ida, is actually a really good buddy of mine. He has a channel in my Discord, and he gives updates constantly. And if you want to beta test this game, you could totally do that. Just go in my Discord, it'll be linked in the description, and go into the Primeval Black channel, start beta testing, and help us out. Alright, next up we have Pokemon Radical Red. Radical Red is an amazing ROM hack. There's a huge team of people who work to put this ROM hack together. It's balanced pretty nicely. There's some good changes in the game. There's so many cool features. I can't even get into all the features, but there's so many cool features. If you haven't played Radical Red, I'd highly suggest it. Most people have. There's a lot of ways to play it. There's a lot of different modes. There's like randomizer mode, restricted mode, hardcore mode. There's so many different ways that you can play this game. You can do like a monotype challenge of this game. It's so much fun. There's so many different fights too. Now, a few criticisms that I will say about Radical Red is that the hardcore mode does need some improvement. When it says hardcore mode, I mean it is very hardcore. Sometimes a little unfair hardcore, especially the Elite Four. The Elite Four is kind of crazy in hardcore mode. It's also pretty hard in normal mode, but hardcore mode is kind of taken to a next level. This is especially really difficult when it comes to Lorelei. Lorelei having a Hail team or a Rain team, which you kind of need different Pokemon for each of those fights, but you also need a plan for every other Elite Four member, which makes the Elite Four extremely difficult. Another way that hardcore mode kind of needs work is that, and this was kind of a problem with Vintage White, a streamer or a YouTuber will beat the game and use something that seemed to be pretty broken. In Radical Red's case, it was Withdraw Slowbro. Withdraw Slowbro with Shell Armor basically just sweeps Bruno. Immediately after someone beat it with that, it was removed from the game, which kind of sucks because the streamer who beat it, maybe their win isn't as credible as someone who beats it after that. And this was huge at Vintage White. Like, Vintage White, someone would beat the Elite Four, and then hazards were removed. Or someone would beat the Elite Four, then Sableye would be removed from Victory Road. It's kind of similar in Radical Red, where people would beat the game and then stuff will be removed. But there is a 2.4 version coming out soon. Hopefully that polishes up the game a lot more. Even with those criticisms, Radical Red has to be S tier. I would say I enjoy Emerald Kaizo slightly more than Radical Red, but Radical Red has to be S tier. There's no question. Alright, next we got the 2 Buffle hacks on this list. Inclement Emerald is a newer ROM hack. It is very similar to Radical Red in a lot of the quality of life changes. It's almost as if they copied and pasted the Radical Red changes into Inclement Emerald, but Inclement Emerald is pretty interesting. There's a lot of map edits that make the game pretty cool. I think the biggest downside to Inclement Emerald is the balancing. The difficulty scaling for a Nuzlocke is kind of weird, and the hardcore mode versus the normal mode isn't different enough for me to really enjoy, in my opinion, for it to be justified as being hardcore. Overall, it's a pretty fun hack, but I feel like it just had so much more potential with the balancing. So I'm gonna put it in B tier, right above Blue Kaizo. Alright, next up we have Photonic Sun and Prismatic Moon. This is also a hack made by Buffalo, creator of Inclement Emerald. Now this hack is really interesting because there's not gym leaders, obviously, because it's Gen 7, there's totem fights. And it's really hard scale difficulty for totem fight, because obviously they're totem fights, you can't really change the totem fights. And basically the strategies for totem fights become the exact same each time you go to them, which makes it kind of repetitive. But finding those strategies are pretty fun, and there are some pretty cool boss fights in this game. The Elite Four in this game is also pretty fun. One thing about this game though is that you get so many encounters, and a lot of the encounters are super broken, so it's kind of tough in the balancing that way. But I have to give some credit because it's kind of hard to make a really good Gen 7 hack, but this hack does definitely need a lot of improvement. Something about Buffalo hacks is that when compared to like Vintage White, Radical Red, Emerald, Kaizo, they're just not balanced in the right way. So I'm gonna put Prismatic Moon, Photonic Sun in C tier right behind Renegade Platinum. Alright, next up we have probably the most underrated ROM hack on this tier list, being Pokemon Unbound. Unbound is an insanely fun ROM hack. It's a completely new map, completely new story. It's balanced very nicely. The boss fights are really fun. And I haven't said this about any other hack, but the music in this game is amazing. On top of having, you know, the usual Pokemon experience of fighting gym leaders, doing fights, encounters, whatnot, this ROM hack also makes extremely hard puzzles, which are really fun to try and beat. So Unbound, I'm actually gonna put it in S tier, right behind Radical Red. This hack also has an Insanity mode, which is extremely difficult as well. It's a really, really fun challenge. All right, next up, we have Dark Rising. Oh man, I don't even know why I put this on this list. Dark Rising, it's a ROM hack that is so bad, so incredibly stupid, that it's actually kind of fun, if that makes sense. This ROM hack was literally made by a 12-year-old. The level scaling is terrible. The second gym is like level 30, then the fourth gym is like level 70. There's so many typos in the game, and there's also a bunch of bugs. This game is absolutely horrendous, but it's kind of funny to play, and it's actually kind of entertaining to try and navigate the atrocity of what this game is. So this is kind of funny. I'm actually gonna put it above Fire Red Omega just because I had a lot of fun playing this game because of just how bad it was. All right, next up we have Kaizo Pokemon White 2. Now, if you don't know what this game is, that's good, because this game is absolutely horrendous. If a 12-year-old made this game, a 5-year-old made this game. I am going to make another tier for this game. I'm making another tier for this game because this game is absolutely horrendous. Never play this game ever in your life. Basically, there is no balance in this game. Balancing does not exist. This person doesn't know what balancing is. The fights are so unfair that you literally have to go like 20 levels above or just catch like different Pokemon to try and find a solution to fights. I'm gonna put the champion team on screen and you can just see how dumb this game is. There's literally a part in this game where you can get soft locked because the map editing was so bad. Now, one saving grace is that there's actually someone improving this game and making Kaizo White 2 better. There's actually a channel on my Discord. His name is Questionable Specimen, changing this game to White 2 Lunatic mode, and he's actually doing a really good job of it, but it's still in development, still in beta testing. So if you want to be updated on the updates to this game, you can go on my Discord and we have a channel for it. All right, next up we have Pokemon Emerald Trashlocke. Emerald Trashlocke is actually pretty cool. I've talked a lot about balancing, and basically the way that this game is balanced is that it only gives you trash Pokemon, and you have to kind of work your way through the game with terrible Pokemon. Like you get a Sunkern, but you don't get a Leaf Stone, or you get a Goldeen that doesn't learn a water move, and then you have to try and use a Love Disc as well. It's a really fun game. It's very balanced, and it's just vanilla. It's straight up vanilla, which is really cool. I'm actually gonna put the Emerald Trashlocke in B tier. I highly suggest people play this. This game is actually a lot of fun. Alright, next up we have Pokemon Eternal X and Wilting Y. Now, before I say anything, I feel like Gen 6 ROM hacking is really cool, and I feel like there's so much potential for a really good Gen 6 game. I think there could even be a really cool Gen 6 Kaizo game at some point. But Eternal X and Wilting Y is the best that we have right now. And similar to Radical Red and Unbound, there's actually an Insanity mode to this game. But sadly, the Insanity mode is pretty unbalanced. Basically, you're just you're just granted a broken Pokemon. Like, you can get like a guaranteed Dialga, Giratina, Lugia, Ho-Oh, all these things, but also the AI has insanely good legendaries and insanely good legendary sets, especially the Elite Four. The Elite Four in Sandy mode is like Kyogre, Drizzle, Rain Team, and whatnot. So you're kind of forced to use the legendaries as well. You can also get an Arceus in Victory Road pretty easily. I will say the Insane mode kind of sucks with balancing, but overall this hack is pretty fun. I just feel like there's so much more potential with Gen 6 ROM hacking though. I'm gonna put this in C tier right behind Rising Ruby. Alright, next up we have Pokemon Fire Red VR missions and MAGM. These hacks are not actually like typical Pokemon games. These are basically like battle simulators slash puzzle games, which is actually something I really enjoyed. Pokemon VR missions, it's basically a bunch of levels with puzzles, and you gotta find solutions to the puzzles. It's actually really cool. I don't want to get into it too much for spoilers, but it is a lot of fun. There's also a pretty cool story with it as well. I highly suggest giving it a try if you just want something small and quick that you can play. That's not the average Pokemon game. Even though this game is really short, I'm gonna put it all the way up in B tier above Inclement Emerald. MAGM, also known as, what is it called? Magic Altering Gym Menagerie. It's actually a pretty interesting hack. It's basically a bunch of gyms and puzzles that you just go through. It's just trials, and you're basically gifted Pokemon to go through these trials with. It's really fun to do a challenge of like, you get a full box of Pokemon, and then if Pokemon dies, you can't use it, and you gotta try to beat the whole game with like one box. It's really fun. It's obviously different than a lot of games. You can customize your movesets, your abilities, and relearn moves as you want as well. It's pretty fun. So we're gonna slap this right in C tier above Prismatic Moon. And there you go. That is my ROM hack tier list, mainly for nuzlocking. Now remember that I'm a pretty hardcore gamer. I play these games with calcs and rare candies and level caps and all that, so take this with a grain of salt. If you want to do one of these tier lists for yourself, so I'll link it in the description. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this tier list, and I hope you guys have a great day. Peace.